Makes you not even want to get out of bed in the morning.
We couldn't even finish morning before we heard about another shooting.
22 people killed as the death toll rises in Texas's latest mass shooting. The first of 2 weekend rampages happening just hours apart.
Shots fired! Downtown! Multiple shots fired!
9 gunned down in Dayton, Ohio in a matter of 30 seconds.
Hate has no place in America.
The president condemning racism and rehashing national conversations on mental health as he plans a trip to Texas. Thanks for joining us here on Capitol Tonight. I'm Karina Kling. Unfortunately, here we are again. A deadly weekend of not one, but 2 horrible tragedies happening just hours apart. It's become an all too familiar scenario. Families planning funerals, politicians pointing fingers. President Donald Trump addressing the violence in a speech from the White House today.
We cannot allow ourselves to feel powerless. We can and will stop this evil contagion.
The president pushing for reforming mental health laws, but avoiding blaming guns for the killings in both El Paso and Dayton. The Ohio shooter killed his sister and 8 other people in a popular entertainment district before being shot dead by police. Authorities say the shooter posted a racist, anti-immigrant manifesto before killing 22 people at this Walmart. 2 of Saturday's victims died from their injuries today. More than 24 other people were wounded. The 21-year-old suspect has been booked on capital murder charges. We are learning more about the El Paso victims, and today hundreds stopping at a makeshift memorial dedicated to those 22 people killed. We want to get out to El Paso now. Our John Salazar is there and joins us now live. John, you spoke to the husband of one of the victims today. I can't even imagine, but what did he tell you?
Well, he shared with me, he was filled with emotion, and I'm standing less than about 100 yards from that Walmart where those 22 people were slaughtered on Saturday. And there behind me, you can see a makeshift memorial, Karina, which was begun on Sunday morning. Now, I spoke to Antonio Bosco here directly behind me, where he was clutching the cross, one of the crosses that bore the name of his wife. He also was telling me a story that shortly before she went inside that Walmart, that he had a terrible premonition.
Oh, it broke.
61-year-old Antonio Bosco is standing less than 200 yards away from where his wife Margie was tragically gunned down.
She goes out and she goes shopping every Saturday here, right here.
The tear-filled gentleman tells me this past Saturday was different.
I don't know, I just had a feeling. A real bad feeling. I said, babe, why don't you just go ahead and stay home? You forget this Saturday, go next Saturday, you double shot.
Bosco's wife kept her routine. She and 21 others did the same, not knowing a killer was on his way to carry out one of the worst massacres in American history.
Well, she always comes home between 1:30 and 2. When it came to 2:15, I knew something was wrong.
By that time, news of the mass shooting spread nationwide.
I waited until about dark time, and I knew something was definitely wrong.
Come Sunday morning, police called Bosco to tell him the bad news.
Man, yesterday when they called all the people in, that's when I found out she was dead. She had gotten shot and killed.
Bosco admits he's tried hard to keep his emotions in check the past few days.
I couldn't cry. I mean, she didn't want that.
Yeah, there behind me, Karina. Earlier, you asked me off camera if those people were the same people were there or if there was an event happening. There has been a stream of hundreds of folks all day long, and me and Robbie Vaughn, my photographer, have been here since about 9 a.m. And the flood of people coming to pay their condolences at this memorial has not stopped. There will be more remembrance later this evening. The next vigil should take place in about an hour. We hope to get down there and get that covered. Reporting in El Paso for Capitol Tonight, I'm John Salazar.
John, thank you very much. As they've been saying, El Paso strong. 21 other families are mourning the loss of their loved ones today. Whitney Wild has more on those who were killed and how they're being remembered.
2 amazing humans were stripped from us, and their babies are left now parentless.
Jordan and Andre Anchondo, parents of 3 young children, were among those killed Saturday. They had dropped off their oldest at cheerleading practice before heading to Walmart to do some back-to-school shopping. They died shielding their 2-month-old son.
baby Paul was recovered from the crime scene with his mother on top of him, and we got word that Andre had jumped in front of his wife to protect his wife and son throughout the whole circumstance.
86-year-old Angie Englesby was in the store's checkout line when the gunman walked in. She had been on the phone with one of her sons just minutes before. They spent hours waiting for word about her. Sunday, they found out she was among those killed. Army veteran and bus driver Arturo Benavides, age 60, was known all throughout the community according to his niece. She described him as someone who would give you the shirt off his back. 7 Mexican nationals were also killed Saturday in the border town. Mexican authorities are looking into possibly requesting extradition for the suspect.
Será una decisión que se tome en su momento. The decision will be made when the time comes, but no one shall be surprised because to Mexico, this individual is a terrorist.
In El Paso, Texas, I'm Whitney Wild reporting.
Both 2020 presidential candidates from Texas are criticizing President Trump for the shooting in El Paso. Beto O'Rourke, who used to represent El Paso in Congress, is blaming Trump's rhetoric for creating a culture of hate, while Julian Castro is echoing that sentiment.
We have a president right now who traffics in this hatred, who incites this violence, who calls Mexican immigrants rapists and criminals, who calls asylum seekers animals and an infestation.
This echoes the kind of language that our president encourages.
O'Rourke told the El Paso Times today that Trump should not visit the city. The mayor of El Paso confirming the president will be there Wednesday and that he'll welcome him despite getting emails and phone calls discouraging him to do so. We do want to get back out to El Paso. Just about an hour ago, we spoke with Democratic State Representative Cesar Blanco. He represents the area where the shooting happened. Representative Blanco, thank you so much for being with us.
It's good to be with you.
Yeah, I first of all just wanted to get your response to fellow Texan O'Rourke, hearing from him, telling the president not to come to El Paso. The mayor saying earlier today he will welcome him. What's your response?
Well, Karina, we are very sad here in El Paso, Texas. Today was the first day that they released the names of the 22 victims that were killed. We're in mourning here in El Paso, and we feel that any kind of distraction from any kind of visit from the president wouldn't necessarily be productive. Our first responders have been working nonstop. Our police officers have been working right here in this crime scene, and we just need a little bit of time to make sure that we do things right here in El Paso. So at this point, we don't think it'd be a good idea.
I mean, you've been on the ground there basically since shortly after the shooting happened. How is the community doing?
Well, look, this shooting happened in my district. My district office is literally down the street from here. And I grew up in this district. You know, it's tragic, and it really hits home. Literally, it hits home, and it happens in your home. You know, you see press conferences far too many times, unfortunately, in this country, where Americans are killed in mass shootings, and then it happens in your own home. We've got to do something about this. My city is in pain. People's parents, mothers, fathers, grandparents have been killed in El Paso as a result of a hateful individual who had easy access to weapons that caused mass destruction here, and we are all very sad today.
We were hearing the response from the president earlier today. He's urging Democrats, Republicans to come together, find some bipartisan solutions, but also laid blame on mental illness, video games. How do you respond to the president's response to all of this?
Well, video games didn't kill 22 people here in El Paso. A white supremacist with a high-powered assault rifle killed those people. We don't know anything about mental health at this point, but statistically, mental health individuals are typically victims of violence rather than the perpetrators themselves. Look, the time for politics and protecting the gun lobby is past. Our elected officials have a duty to protect our families in Texas and abroad. And we're going to continue to work to ensure that we're doing everything we can to protect our families.
What about on the state level? Trump mentioned his push for red flag laws, temporarily removing those red flag laws would temporarily remove a gun from someone who poses a danger to themselves or others. You know, as we reported over the last several months, that failed to pass to get anywhere in Texas. Does this change that?
Well, we've got to do something in the state of Texas, you know, with Sutherland Springs, with Santa Fe, now El Paso. We're going to continue to see this type of violence, and it's on our watch as elected officials. This is our time in the history of Texas to do something bold and do something right. That's if we want to honor those individuals who have been mowed down by gunfire in our state. We can do something and to protect families in Texas. And right now is the time to act. We can no longer wait for people to continue to be killed in our state without any action. So I'm asking leaders, both Democrats as well as Republicans, to come together to find sensible solutions to mitigate this gun violence in our state.
Your colleague, Representative Roland Gutierrez from San Antonio, some others are calling for a special session to address the gun violence. Do you agree with them?
We're going to use all options possible to ensure that we address this issue. You know, we are in conversations with the governor as well as the lieutenant governor and the Speaker of the House. We want to make sure that we address this in a comprehensive way. At this point, all options are on the table. So we're going to continue as a delegation and work with other delegations that have had these type of mass shootings to make sure that we get this right and fix this.
I mean, you're saying you've met with the governor. We know he was on the ground there over the weekend. Texas is a gun-friendly state. Some of you guys have pushed gun control measures even this past session. What are the chances of tighter gun controls in Texas following this mass shooting?
Well, I think last legislative session there was a lot done for school safety. We did some work on mental health. But I think we need to go beyond that. Clearly, this shooting did not happen in a school. It happened at a Walmart parking lot and inside the Walmart. So we need to look at, re-examine this and see how we can better control the access of these weapons that get into the hands of hateful people.
Representative Cesar Blanco, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate your time. And if there is any good news to come of this weekend's tragedy, it's seeing the outpouring of support from around Texas. In Austin, a line of people snaked around the state capitol grounds, waiting in the hot sun to donate blood. Our Catherine Giese spoke with one woman who says the El Paso shooting is a disheartening reminder of the past.
Compassionate Texans in line to give.
Whether it's a mass casualty shooting or a natural disaster event, we always see an influx of donors who are giving back. It's the only positive outcome from a tragedy like this.
Among the donors, an El Paso native.
I think, like a lot of people from El Paso, we always think that how could this happen in our hometown? How could this happen to us?
Others with their own reasons to give.
It's painful. It makes me angry.
Karen Miller's decision to donate Monday happened just a few blocks from this line 53 years ago. A shooter from atop this tower at the University of Texas killed 14 people and injured another 31.
And my uncle was killed in that shooting. He was a police officer who responded to the incident.
He was also a brand new father.
And it's shocking to me that here we are 53 years later, and there are more families that are continuing to be added to this club of sadness and everlasting pain.
Miller says donating alongside more than 100 other Texans is a way to honor her uncle and the 31 people who were senselessly gunned down in 2 different mass shootings this past weekend.
It's encouraging that others are moved.
And while none of the blood given here will go directly to those still fighting for their lives in El Paso or Dayton, Nick Canedo with We Are Blood says it will ensure a healthy stock.
It's the blood on the shelves that saves lives immediately.
In the unfortunate case of another tragedy. For Capital Tonight, Catherine Giese.
If you missed the blood drive today, you can donate anytime at any We Are Blood location across the 10 Central Texas counties the organization serves. We will post that information on our website, SpectrumLocalNews.com. Coming up next on Capital Tonight, we turn our attention to the trade war with China and what the latest tensions could mean for Texas farmers and the economy. An escalating trade war with China sent the Dow into a downward plunge today. It fell below 26,000 points for the first time since June. Stocks were responding to the Chinese government devaluing the yuan to its weakest level against the U.S. dollar in more than a decade. It ignited fear on Wall Street that a currency war is next. China also announced it will stop buying American agricultural goods. This after President Trump threatened a new round of tariffs on the country last week. For the perspective on what this could mean for Texans, we're joined now by the Quorum Report's Harvey Kronberg. Harvey, good to see you.
Always a pleasure.
I know that, obviously China, Texas, big trading partners. What do you think this means or could mean for Texas farmers and the economy?
Well, they've already pledged not to buy any more agricultural goods from the United States. That has a direct impact on probably the 3rd or 4th largest industry in the state. It's also possible that they stop buying oil and gas from Texas or from the United States. They could buy from Iran instead. And we made a lot of pretty expensive promises in the last legislative session without dedicated revenue streams, all on the assumption that we would continue with a healthy and robust economy. And if we start seeing parts of our economy dry up or even begin to shrink seriously, it could have a devastating effect. One economist that I read today pointed out that if the Chinese started buying more of their oil and gas from Iran than from the United States, that we could see a drop in oil prices of $20 or $25. And think about what that would do to the hole that would blow in the budget.
I don't know how many of the state's leaders are reading The Economist that you looked at today, but just in terms of, are we hearing anything from them yet, even with today's latest news?
The timidity of our elected officials in the face of President Trump has been pretty overwhelming all the way back to NAFTA. We, as he was attacking the NAFTA treaty, we heard maybe 1 or 2 statements from the governor and silence from everybody else.
Farmers, concerned about all of this?
Well, absolutely. Had it not been for rural Texas, Republicans would have not held on to the major statewide offices they held on to in this last election. The suburbs essentially abandoned the Republican Party, and were it not for 1 million rural voters that voted reliably Republican, we would have seen a Democratic House. And remember, the lieutenant governor only won with 51%. Right. So they owe a big debt to agricultural Texas, and that's actually kind of the fascinating part of all this, is that there are some positive things to be said about the president's policy towards China, but it seems to be mostly impacting the most central parts of his coalition.
Good segue for the next topic on 2020, but the Texans retiring. We've seen this exodus over the last couple of weeks. The latest, the North Texas Republican, Representative Kenny Marchant, 4th Republican congressman to announce his retirement in recent days. Are you surprised by this?
It was recently dubbed the Texodus.
Oh, yeah, there you go. That's better. Yeah, I like Texit when they were saying it.
I was with some folks that have been longtime observers of the Texas political scene, and nobody can remember 4, even 3 voluntary retirements of congressmen where they simply say they're not going to run again. Now, it may have happened in the past, but usually what happens is redistricting reshuffles the deck, and then there's a sweep that knocks them out and people lose. We're not just looking at these 4, there's 3 more that are in the mix. Potentially John Carter's name is mentioned out of Williamson County, Mike McCall, and
Central Texas.
Exactly, and Michael Burgess out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. What almost all of them have in common is they represent suburban districts. They all lost or won their last election by 5 percentage points or less. Beto O'Rourke performed well, and we believe that there is some kind of polling that they're seeing that suggests that they are more vulnerable than most of us presume. And I think there's weariness in terms of defending this president and all of his, shall we say, impulses.
Well, you mentioned those others. I'll let you weigh in on the three that have announced. The other three that have announced, we can put up that graphic now, but Representative Will Hurd, San Antonio, Mike Conaway, Pete Olson. I mean, I think, you know, the biggest surprise out of that was Will Hurd.
Will Hurd, rising star inside the Republican Party, and of unique significance because he's the only African-American Republican member of Congress. And I think for him it was particularly weary. He's editorialized against the president in the New York Times. He's voted against the president on a number of resolutions. And I think it's very difficult considering the makeup of that district, which is pretty much 50-50, going in front of town hall meetings. And ultimately, this is going to be a referendum on Donald Trump, and I don't think that was something that he particularly relished.
How tough do you think it will be for a Republican to win that district? There's
no obvious name emerging at this point, and when he first ran, he was considered a long shot against a better-known Pete Gallego. But very personable, has a great resume, a good story, and he worked the hell out of that district. And I thought it was a great representative, well liked, but his history, his conflict, and a lot of the language that comes out of the president simply is not defensible from his perspective.
And obviously the Democrat, the lead Democrat at least, challenging him there has gotten a head start. So. And
he won his last election by what, 300 votes, if I remember correctly?
It was 967. 900? She was on recently and said that. Okay. Don't quote me on that number, but.
It was a close election, and nothing about what's going on in Washington would reinforce his position today.
Yep. Harvey Kronberg, thank you very much.
My
pleasure.
See you
next week. We'll be right back. We are awaiting a vigil for a 15-year-old who was killed in the El Paso shooting to begin in just a moment. Javier Rodriguez was at Walmart with his uncle buying school supplies when the gunfire rang out. His memorial, his vigil tonight that the community has planned is one of many that we will be following throughout the course of this week, and stay with Spectrum News for more on that a little bit later tonight. That is all the time that we have tonight. Tomorrow we continue our coverage of the El Paso shooting. We'll be joined by a counterterrorism expert to discuss more about what we know about the shooter and how people can become radicalized. Plus, our political analysts will be here. That's Tuesday at 7. Until then, thanks for watching. Have a great night.